like to thank everybody for coming. Um, we're here today to learn a little bit about Thomas Harris, um, our second conversation about a living author. Um, we did also have to get permission to talk about him. Uh, and they said, fine, just don't lie. I want to thank the Blueberry Patch for allowing us to be hosted here on this beautiful Sunday in November. And so here we go. I always read from a brief, uh, I'm sorry, a brief English grammar, which is Scott and Buck. And here's the introduction. It is sometimes said that grammar is a collection of rules for correct speaking and writing, but this is not strictly true. The rules of grammar are like the laws of any physical science such as chemistry, physics, astronomy, or physical geography. These sciences are not a collection of rules telling the winds and tides, for instance, what they must do, or prescribing how a certain acid or a certain base shall unite. They only report and explain what happens. And so, grammar does not say to us directly, you must speak thus and so, but only English people at present time do speak thus and so for the following reasons. Knowing this fact, we shall undoubtedly choose to speak so, in order to easily and precisely be understood by others, or to avoid appearances of eccentricities or ignorance. But grammar goes no further than to report and explain the usage of language, leaving us to choose for ourselves whether we should follow them or not. All of the authors that we've spoken about have. So I guess that's why we chose them. Anyways, our first one is Thomas Harris, born April 11th, 1940, in Jackson, Tennessee. The interesting thing about Thomas Harris is he is the 21st century's example of J.D. Salinger. He's a recluse. He has a home here in Florida, as well as his home in Sag Harbor. And his time in Tennessee was very, very short. He was approximately 4 or 5 years old when his family moved to Rich, Mississippi, and he attended the public schools there in Mississippi. From a brief conversation that his mother had had with a local Mississippian reporter, she had stated this very this very quote. He was an introverted, bookish little boy. He didn't blossom at all until high school. So he attended Rich High School in Rich, Mississippi. And then went on, and his attendance at Rich High was graduating third in his class. Again, I don't know how large that class was. But he went on to receive a pick of a handful of universities in the South. One being Ole Miss and one being Baylor in Waco, Texas. And he went on to choose Baylor in Waco, Texas. And this was at the peak of the early American 60s movement. Um, and another quote from his mother was a statement that this scarred his psyche. And he majored in English and literature. He minored in history. And he graduated in 1964. And normally these early times with other authors that we've talked about have been extensive. Now, we do know that there was some early writings. None have been talked about, published, termed, addressed, or titled. But we do know that he did write when he was young. We don't know when he started writing. And we do know that he had a minor, well, his mother called it an affliction, with odd crime stories. He was a reader of crime stories. And he was interested in the police blotter, both in Waco and in and in Texas in general, as well as national stories. Now, as we all know, back at that period of time, those kinds of stories were not written. They were written about, but we weren't given the opportunity in that period of time to get really in depth in what was going on nationwide, because we didn't have that. If you read your local newspaper or the local state paper, that's pretty much what you knew. So while he was in college, he worked in the local newspaper, which is the Waco Tribune Herald, and this was as an internship almost. And what he decided to do is that he would cover the police goings-ons for that newspaper. And there's not much to be known about that except what he did write. And apparently wrote a few hundred pieces on odd crimes, murder, and so forth. And that was generally for the state of Texas, as well as Oklahoma. But in Waco, there were really no big crimes, police procedure issues, but he covered the police beat. And in 1968, he moved to New York City, and he wanted to do the same thing for the local newspapers. At the time, the Times didn't deal with that. That was above them. So it was the other New York newspapers. And he was unable to find a job there. And he was friends with a couple of people from Baylor whose parents were active reporters for the AP, which is Associated Press. And with those connections, he was able to land his first official job outside of Waco in the AP office, which was housed at that particular time in the Times building. And during his time there, got to really focus his hobby on the psychological aspects of why people do what they do and why they do the bad things that they do. He didn't really care about the good things that were going on. I mean, that was all well and good. And AP, as everybody knows, is just the facts, please. So anyways, I'm going to leave it there. 1974